Good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Reverend. How are you?
Hey, brother. How are you?
I am doing fine, my friend, and we are live, and you're on Late Night in the Midlands. And I'll tell you, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here tonight. I have read a good deal of your book, and I've seen lots of videos, and I think you're right on, man.
Listen, first of all, believe you me, it's my pleasure to be here. Brian Kennard, great publication, says, sending you greetings and salutations. He's my publisher. And listen, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, good. And so, so have I. I really have to. This is something that we do discuss at least once a week. We get into this conversation on this show. I know I've got a good friend by the name of Peter Kling, who also believes right along the lines like you do, that there is evidence in these scriptures, such as the Bible, of aliens.
Yeah, and listen, I could always be wrong, and I don't think I am, but I could always be, and I wanted to. I'm not trying to take away anybody's faith or anything like that. No, that's not what I'm about. But I think that in all these cosmologies that talk about these star people or beings coming down from the sky, I think we have to at least look at it and then go from there. If it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. I am a minister. I do not preach this in my church. I'm not trying to start a UFO church or anything like that.
Right.
But as you know, in my bio, I'm a professional. One of the other things I do is I'm a professional diversity officer, and so a diversity consultant. And this is just an extension of that work. That diversity is in our cosmos, in our universe, and that the universe is teeming with life, and we really need to just be open. That's all. Be open.
Right. And, there's a little section of your book that says, that you confess that you do have an agenda in writing this book, that you want us to look at the monotheistic religions with fresh eyes for our 21st century. And you know what? You're right. We really need to look outside the box. I don't think, assuming there is a God, I have no doubt that we were given the capabilities to think and explore for a reason, for a reason.
No question. And again, for me, it's not about trying to take away people's faith. I don't think that these views necessarily are threatening. But I know that some people get scared about this kind of stuff. It's blasphemy, it's this, that, and the other. And I just say, look, let's just look at the evidence and see where it leads us. The beautiful thing about this, one of the beautiful things, is that you find the marriage of science and religion.
Yes.
And they don't have to be distant cousins who rarely, if ever, speak to each other. And the only thing I feel with our planet is that our technology has outrun our spirituality. I think King said it much more eloquently. And so we have this technology, but we don't have the spirituality to go with it. And so what's going to happen is, if we're not careful, we're going to blow ourselves up.
Absolutely.
We fight too much.
And I think there's evidence that this has happened before on this planet. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, in the East Indian cosmology, they talk about the Vimanas and possibility of nuclear blast. These flying machines called Vimanas. They're, of course, in Judeo-Christian scriptures, we hear about a war in heaven between Michael and his archangels. And so what's interesting is that, even these beings fight. They're very much like us. And so, the point becomes, at least in my mind, how do we learn to love? How do we learn to tap into our full potential as creative beings? And so for me, I know some people are into propulsion systems and how do they fly and do they come from different dimensions? And I mean, I think all these things are fascinating. And maybe it's because I'm a clergy person, but for me, my interest is once you've had this experience, and you don't have to have this experience, obviously, to know that love conquers hate, and that, you don't have to have someone from another world come and have to have an extraterrestrial experience. However, what does come about is, how do I walk into the unknown? How do I deal with people? Because we can't even get along sometimes, just human beings. You're black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, you're Tea Party, you're not. We can't even pull it together here on planet Earth. So it's going to be tough to pull it together with beings who come from elsewhere.
Absolutely. And, you said something else that rang true in the book, and that is that our task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find the barriers within ourselves that we have built against it. And I think that is very clever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's several people get credit for that, but the poet Rumi, I got that as hanging on my wall, and I think that's it. We don't have to seek for love. Once we seek to the barriers of it, we'll find it. So it's not about seeking, let me find love. It's let me look within and find the places within me that I block that love, where I feel I'm undeserving of that love, where I'm afraid of that love. Then is when that's when the journey begins. That's when you go down the rabbit hole, my friend.
Oh, yeah. And now, Alien Scriptures, if I may say so, is an incredible book, and it really makes a man think, let me tell you. So I'd like to dig into it some, if we may.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. I wonder first, what led you down this road, being that you studied in seminaries and you devoted a good part of your life to learning about the Scriptures. And again, what led you down this path of Alien Scriptures? In other words, I guess, at what point did the light come on and you said to yourself, aliens?
Well, okay. It's a great question. Okay. I can remember growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, which is where I'm from originally. When, I went to church, I was everywhere. I was in every denomination, and part of that was trying to please my parents, but also it's almost like I had done this before. I knew from an early age that I was going to be some type of priest or minister, maybe a secular minister like a therapist or what have you, but I knew that I would be speaking in front of crowds of people. But I can remember when someone asked me, do you believe there's life on other planets? And I said no, and they seemed stunned. And they said, why? I said, because it's not in the Bible. What got me into this was my own personal contact experience. I talk about it in the book, coming back from the pyramids in Chichen Itza and Tulum on the Yucatan Peninsula. And I talk about the being in my room, December 28th, 1989, I'm coming back. And that changed my whole life, obviously. And again, I go about it in much more detail in the book. But after that, after I went to a psychiatrist, because I thought I was losing my mind, I don't know. It was almost like that event triggered me. Maybe that's what they wanted me to do. But I could not get enough of, these beings and religious texts.
Right.
And so I just went great guns at every book I could buy, every TV show I could look at. Because, see, I wasn't a Trekkie or anything like that. I can honestly tell you, at 56 years young, that I've only seen maybe a half of episode, if that, of a Star Trek movie. It just didn't draw me. So it wasn't like, well, man, he's got an overactive imagination. He's saying this, that, and the other. Not at all. Even now, I mean, Trekkie, I'm just not into it. But I was having these experiences. The last one I just had was July 4th of this year, after many years in between. And my life started to change, obviously. I started to feel a connectedness, not just to humankind, but to the earth. I started caring about this planet. Just my whole consciousness had changed. It was almost like I became more intelligent. But, words get in the way, but words are all we have. But I got to tell you, and I just started reading in the Hindu scriptures, in the Hebrew Bible, in the New Testament, even some Buddha scripture that may lend itself to that. I mean, some of this is speculation, but I think now with shows like Ancient Aliens, let me tell you, 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't even be talking about this. I could have lost my job. I don't preach it from my pulpit, even though many of my congregants have said, I've seen you on TV talking about this. And they don't bat an eye. But that's what triggered me coming back from Mexico, waking up in the middle of the night, seeing my room lit up like Times Square, seeing this pear-shaped being with the wraparound Ray-Ban eyes, not a gray, because they're different species, and we must be careful when we talk about aliens and what do they want. Well, that's with people. They're different species and races. And this being is staring at me with this metallic jumpsuit, and I pull the covers up over my head, like any other red-blooded American man would do, I guess, hoping it would go away. And I feel like I'm outside. I feel like I'm outside. All of a sudden, I'm freezing. And I open my eyes, and I'm in my room. And, for about 6-8 months, every full and new moon, I was having visitations. To this day, not as bad, but I will sleep with, I'll keep my light on until my bedroom light, until the very end. Now, they've never hurt me. It's just the fear. And fear is a terrible thing for human beings because it's fear. It's only love and fear, and so you get to choose each day. But for me, they never hurt me. They've always been friendly. As a matter of fact, they've actually helped me in many times. But, it's just the shock of my doors are locked, the windows are closed. It's pretty chilly here in the mountains of North Carolina this evening. Mm-hmm. And to wake up in the middle of the night and see a being in your room, it's just that fright.
And I'm in Columbia, South Carolina.
I got to tell you, it'll wake you up.
Oh, I bet it will. And I would be, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'd love to meet him. But let's face it, we're always afraid of the unknown, and that's why people fear death so much, because they just don't know. And same thing goes with aliens, I think. And for the record, I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, so I'm not far from
Yeah, we're neighbors.
Yeah, it is chilly.
Yeah, it is chilly. I love this weather. I love the seasons. That's why I stay on the East Coast. And my wife is a Southerner. She's from Atlanta. But yeah, it's gotten chillier. But I love it. I love the autumn weather, and the leaves are changing and that kind of thing. But then, like I said, and then it made me go to the Bible and, okay, where are these beings? I started looking at the stories differently. Jesus and the Star of Bethlehem. Started looking at Ezekiel a little differently. I mean, they're talking about things in the sky. Started looking at the Exodus story again, the pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night, which, by the way, there's no Jewish religion until the Exodus. And so I'm like, wow. Jesus, also being Jewish, knew these stories. And so, I started saying, now, wait a minute. If it's in the sky and I don't know what it is, that's the definition of unidentified flying object. But as we come into the Christmas season and you read that story, there are many ways to read it, obviously, and there are many different interpretations. But thinking of the Jesus story, the birth of Jesus, Stars don't fly across the sky and stop and shine lights down on mangers. If they did that, the whole gravitational pull of the planet, you want to talk about tsunamis.
Yeah.
You want to talk about FEMA trying to get to a disaster area, but this light, this star, three wise men follow it, and it stops and it hovers over the place where the baby's born. Man, that sounds like something intelligent in the sky.
Yeah, that's the way I think of it as well. You know, you hear about the light shining on them for what was it? I guess, I don't know, for 40 years, was it? A 40-year walk?
Yeah, you're talking about the Exodus story. Yes, they're wandering in the desert, just pillar of cloud by day. That means, it looks like a cloud in the daytime, and a lot of modern-day UFO sightings have UFOs hiding in clouds, or there's a trail of clouds behind them. So at night, it's a pillar of cloud. In the evening, in the day, it's a pillar of cloud. At night, it's the pillar of fire by night, which means it's glowing. When the Israelites are fleeing Egypt, this thing is leaving them, and it stops above them while they sleep at night. And in the morning, they move on, and they follow it. This is intelligence.
Absolutely.
If people are following this thing. So for me, I started to say, well, I'm not saying God is an extraterrestrial, not at all. But what I am saying that maybe what we think as God may be an extraterrestrial. I mean, Jehovah, Yahweh, I'm sorry, he has temper tantrums. He wants to drown everybody and start all over again. He has the Israelites go into Canaan and kill and rape and pillage, and there are already people there. It's kind of like the Columbus story. I discovered a place where people already lived.
Yeah.
And so, these people go in and they rape and pillar and murder. And I'm looking at 1 Samuel chapter 5. Now, in the King James Version, which is the worst translation you can ever have, because it makes all the people there speak Shakespearean English, in the Hebrew translation, this God, chapter 5, verse 6, gave the people hemorrhoids. Now, in the King James Version, they call them boils. But for those of you who are Bible thumpers, or if you want to look, go to 1 Samuel chapter 5. Read all of chapter 5 and chapter 6, and you will see that the Philistines, they stole the Ark of the Covenant, and they get hemorrhoids. Okay, what kind of God would strike people down with hemorrhoids? If you go into Jeremiah chapter 13, I'm just making a case, so be patient with me. Chapter 13, verse 14, the Lord says, I will smash them one against the other, parents and children alike, declares the Lord. No pity, compassion, or mercy will stop me from destroying them. That doesn't seem like a loving person.
No, it don't.
Okay, and this is the Hebrew translation I'm reading. All right, if you go to Ezekiel chapter 4, all right, Ezekiel chapter 4, this God tells Ezekiel to eat excrement on a barley cake. It says, chapter 4, verse 12, eat it as a barley cake. You shall bake it on human excrement before their eyes. So says the Lord, shall the people of Israel eat their bread unclean among the nations to whom I will banish them. He answered me, I allow you cow's dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm not making this stuff up. Now, if we look in Amos, chapter 5, verse 8, who made the Pleiades and Orion? How did these ignorant people know that there were planets called Pleiades and Orion? I was told that people thought the earth was flat until Columbus. I asked this in my seminary class, And my Old Testament professor, at least she didn't lie. She said, I don't know. If you look at Job, chapter 38, verse 31, can you tie cords to Pleiades or undo the reign of Orion? Again, so these people know about planets. Where are they getting this information? And last but not least, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. Okay, how do these people know that the earth was a sphere?
That's right.
And it's rhetorical. I'm not asking you to answer that, but these were some of the questions.
Yeah. Because
and this is right here in the Bible. Now, people aren't going to preach on this on Sunday, which I wish they would, or at least entertain it. But how do they know? How do they know about these planets?
That's true, because we're led to believe that it was just recently that we've discovered the world wasn't flat, and but these people apparently knew a whole lot more. And how did these ancient folks know so much about not only the stars but building structures like pyramids?
Yes.
And patterns.
The technology. We can't do a pyramid today. We don't have the technology to build a pyramid today that was built 10, 15, 20,000 years ago in Egypt. We don't have the technology now to do it. Where did they get it from? But we were told slaves did it. Really?
Yeah, I know. And,
really?
And patterns that were made on the ground that can only be seen by the air. I mean, why would they do that?
Yeah, the Nazca lines or the Nazca plains in South America. And so again, these are the questions that drove me to start to say, hey, there's more going on here. And all the cosmologies, whether it's Native American folk, First Nations folk talking about the star people, whether it's, again, the East Indian brothers and sisters talking about the Vimanas and the Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads. I mean, they're talking about, and everybody's not lying. This is not fanciful language. They're trying to say, in the language of their day, that these beings flew. When you see angel, angel just means messenger, of course, in Greek, but when you see a human being depicted in a painting or something as an angel, they're not telling you that they actually had wings. What they're trying to tell you is these people flew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
these people flew. Not that they had wings coming out of their back, but they had the ability to fly. And they were considered gods. So I started looking at that. I started looking at places like in Zechariah 5 and Zechariah 6, when they talk about the Lord was sent people to patrol the earth. And I'm like, patrol, okay? Like if you're on a night patrol in Vietnam or in Iraq or Afghanistan, you go. That means you're going out to scout. And so I said to myself, well, if you are omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent, if you are this God, you don't have to send people out to patrol because you know everything.
That's right.
So if you're sending people out to patrol, or in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, when you send people down to Abraham, they looked human, they ate, to find out how many people are faithful in that city, you're supposed to know that. You don't have to send scouts. You already know how many people are faithful in the city.
That's right. And it's just things like that make, I guess average people like myself ask questions. Sometimes I get crucified by people for asking these types of questions about the Bible. Oh, no, you just got to have faith. And it's like, but there's more to it. I've always felt like there's more to it than what's been preached to me. I mean, I grew up as a Catholic, and I would go to church with my father just to make him happy. But I really found it boring, to be honest with you. And, and I always thought there had to be more. And just recently, in the last 6 months or so, I started reading the Bible again because I wanted to, I've heard everybody give interpretations of what they think. And and that's what I get out of it when I read it. There's things, if you use common sense to think about some of these things they're describing, I think it could be explained today, and people don't like the explanation that they're given.
Right. And faith doesn't mean that you don't think for yourself.
Right.
Dr. King said faith is taking the first step when you don't see the rest of the staircase. But that's a different faith, if you will, than I just pointed out several passages that I'm not making up. Again, you can read the Hebrew Bible, you can read the Aramaic Bible. I mean, for me, it used to always puzzle me why we know Jesus spoke Aramaic and we know he spoke Hebrew. He may have spoke some Latin too, but scholars can agree that he at least spoke Aramaic and Hebrew. Why are we reading the Bible in Greek? I mean, do you see how much is lost in translation? It boggles the mind. You don't have to be a biblical scholar to figure it out. If I speak English, why study my writings in French?
That's right.
It just doesn't make sense. And then you see what's lost in translation. There's different translations. In Aramaic, the Lord's Prayer says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. I mean, not the Lord's Prayer, but in Matthew, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. That makes more sense than what we've been usually told. The Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, let me not wander into temptation. That's very different than saying, lead me not into temptation, because you have to say, if you love me and you want the best for me, why would you deliberately lead me into temptation? Now, some people will say, well, God, it's a test. Well, why would I have to be tested?
That's right. He made us.
Why? And someone will give you another Bible verse. But what they will do is give you not what they thought through themselves, but what they've been told.
Right.
And I understand it's scary stuff. I really do. But for me, it doesn't take away my belief in something greater than myself. The story of Jesus, the myth, and I don't mean that it necessarily didn't happen. There's an old saying that just because it didn't happen, something didn't happen, doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. But for me, the Jesus story. See, I'm born here in the West. I'm a Western man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was born in Afghanistan, maybe it would be Muhammad. Or a little further east, maybe it would be Gautama Buddha. But these stories that shaped my life, and I've tried to get away from them, but I always come back, is that message from the New Testament and from the Hebrew Bible. But I look at them with fresh eyes.
And I think that's important that we do that, because, everybody says they want to know, they want the truth. Well, if you want the truth, you've got to look outside the box, because if we all just stick to what we've been taught, we're not going to find the truth, because it's been, I don't know if I would say it is nowadays at least being deliberately hidden from us. I don't know when that started. How that started, but that's where we are right now. I mean, because there is UFO activity like no tomorrow. I mean, people got cell phones on them with cameras all the time. I mean, these pictures come up left and right. I've had sightings of my own, and I know that what I've seen is nothing that I've ever seen in an airport here on this planet. So, we're being visited, and we have been. Now, what I do wonder is, how come they made such contact with everybody, back, say, thousands of years ago, and today we don't see it wide scale? I mean, yes, people are being contacted, but it's not, I think it sounds like it was common back in the biblical era.
Yeah. I mean, there are probably many answers to that. I don't claim to know the answer to that. I mean, obviously, the advantages were your technology. You would certainly get people's attention. The certain races that have come here to help us to evolve and to go to the next level of consciousness and awareness, they didn't have to worry about Star Wars, weapon shooting at them, that kind of thing. But the downside was that we give our power away so easily as human beings that we worship them as gods.
Exactly.
And they were trying to give people a way to live.
And
I mean, they were trying to give people, whether it was Buddha, whether it was Lao Tzu, whether it was Jesus or Muhammad, they were trying to give humankind a way to get along on this planet. And I still maintain that if Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus or if any of these folk came back, they would look at us and our religions and say, you know, this is not really quite what I had in mind.
I agree. Can you imagine if we were able to go back, say, 2,000-3,000 years, and we were able to take just a few pieces of technology with us, like a cell phone, maybe a jetpack on our backs, or anything like that? I mean, you know, they would right away, I think, would think we were gods, and I think that's what happened in some cases.
Yes, it happened a lot.
Yeah,
and things get distorted. Stories change over the years. You can tell the story to two people today, and by the time you hear it by midnight, it's a totally different story.
Yeah.
And so, you're talking about at least the New Testament, the Second Testament. I mean, Matthew wasn't written until 40 years after Jesus' death. 40 years. John was written 90 years before someone decided to write this story down.
Yeah, it's kind of like remembering a dream. And then, you had a dream, and then just try remembering most of it the next night is difficult.
Yeah. And the Gospels have different stories. Mark doesn't have a resurrection story. I mean, Matthew has the genealogy of Jesus, but the other Gospels don't. I mean, these people are writing from their perspective. Does that mean they're not truths there? Of course, doesn't mean that. It's a fantastic book of wisdom. But we can use the Bible to support anti-gay legislation. We can use it. We used it to support slavery. We used it against, all kinds of people who we deemed the other. You can make the Bible mean anything you want it to mean, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've known people who've done that too.
Yeah. But what I'm talking about here is, let's look at this and let's see, were these beings from other worlds coming here, helping us get on our feet and starting religions, and we took the ball and ran with it and distorted the message. I think that's pretty much it.
I think you're right. And Reverend, we've got to take a break here, so hang on with me for just a moment, and then we'll come back and talk some more. I'm really enjoying this. Me
too, Michael. And but please remind me. I can tell people where to get the book if they're interested.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Why don't you do that before we even hit the break?
Okay, it's called Alien Scriptures, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. There's a section in the Quran that I put in there recently, so it's a new edition. It's $9.89 for the paperback. It is $4.99 on Kindle or Nook. You can get it at Barnes & Nobles. You can get it at Amazon.com. You may also get it by going to my website, which is michaeljscarter.com. You can get on my blog, or you can just click on the site, and you can also click on some of my Ancient Alien appearances on the History Channel.
Okay, great. So hang on with us for a moment, Reverend, and we will. Reverend, let me ask you this, and this comes right out of your book as well, but it's an excellent question. If UFOs were involved in developing the biblical religion, as is suggested in the book, then as your book suggests, there comes many questions, and I agree. But two that come to mind right now, is a miracle still a miracle if it is caused by advanced technology? And I think that's an excellent question, rather than by supernatural. And again, I'm stealing this right out of your book because it is a great question. And the other, if aliens have directed our culture biologically, like genetic engineering, and inspired our religion, then who or what is God? And those are a couple of questions I'd like to address. just to start
Well,
things.
let me start with your initial one about technology and miracles. As you stated before, technology. I mean, we believe in magic today. We have all our technology and what have you. So, to a primitive people, lasers and the raising of the dead. Let's say if we're going to take those stories literally. Well, even today, if someone here raised someone who was clinically dead, we'd be in a scramble. I would say that it may not be a miracle. It may be, I forget, was it Sheldrake? I forget who the quote, but I'm paraphrasing, that there's no such thing as a supernatural laws. It's just laws that we probably are not aware of yet in our limited view. So, quantum physics is telling us more and more about parallel universes and things like that, where you and I are actually living more than one life now. Maybe in another life you're home with your wife, or maybe I'm out at a party or I'm at church, but there's different dimensions and different parallel universes. So I don't know what a miracle would be. For primitive people, for ignorant people, any type of display of technology will be supernatural. But again, I say maybe it's not supernatural. Maybe they're laws. When these beings came into my home, they walked through the wall. They came in on a blue light. Is that supernatural, or is that technology?
I think
was that a
technology.
Miracle? It depends on the perspective. For me, the question of what is God is not a difficult one, because anything I say God is, it's not. The finite can never fathom the infinite. And any person who says that they know God or they know what God is, they're wrong, because God is so much more. Now, I think that there is a force. Even some extraterrestrials, if you read and research, talk about, they wouldn't call it maybe God. They may call it a supreme intelligence or creation or what have you, but it's not an anthropomorphic being with arms and legs and what have you. I've always, just recently I've been doing some thinking on, people saying that I'm made in the image of God. I don't know if that's true, because Jesus says that those who worship God will worship God in spirit and in truth. So that, God is spirit. So that's formless. But if I looked at extraterrestrials probably doing some genetic engineering and what have you, then perhaps I am made in the image and likeness of some extraterrestrials, because all of them do not look like us, or many of them do, but with 2 arms, 2 legs, what have you. So that's, we make God in our own image.
Right.
That's all. We can't help it, because that's what human beings do. That's why we fight and kill each other over God. I think that, and I feel that maybe we should stop arguing about whether God exists. I mean, what's the old adage that for those who do believe, no amount of evidence is needed, and for those who don't, no amount of evidence is going to be
accepted,
necessary.
Yeah.
However, we can start to try and have an experience of God. And for those of you who don't like the word God, put the word life there. Put the word life. Life and God are interchangeable. For atheist brothers and sisters or humanists, put the word life there. I think that we do need to entertain the fact that we may have been created and bioengineered. Plenty of stories in the Bible. I always found it interesting. And I'm being flipped with this comment, but Gabriel has the best job in the Bible, in the Quran, because every time he visits a woman, they wind up pregnant. It's a great gig.
Yeah.
It's a great gig. He goes to John the Baptist's mother. Now, these are barren women. They're up in age. He goes to, he's in the Quran when they tell about the Jesus story, and he also is the one who tells Muhammad to recite and recites the Quran to him. He goes to, her name is Manoah, I think, Samson's mom. Everywhere he goes, a woman gets pregnant. And these people are barren. These women are barren. They're up in age. They've gone past menopause, but somehow they become pregnant. Mary becomes pregnant. We get this story that she was a virgin. The word virgin in Hebrew is alma, A-L-M-A. It doesn't mean a woman whose hymen wasn't broken. It means a young girl. Saint Jerome was the one who had that translated to meaning that, of course, we can't have Jesus, and even though in the Bible it does, in Matthew and Luke, we see that Jesus has brothers and sisters. So Miriam was having sex the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But we can't have Jesus. His mother can't be soiled with having known a man. It's just like the age. Nowhere do we see that Mary Magdalene is a prostitute, but yet down through the ages, she's been called a prostitute. So it goes on and on and on and on. And, we need to look at these scriptures. I suggest to do some research. Read the Gospel of Philip. There's a wonderful passage in the Gospel of Philip where Peter and the other disciples, now these did not make it into the canon, because history is written by the victors, but there's a passage in, go Google it, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus kisses Mary on the mouth. And Peter says, why do you treat her better than you treat us? And Jesus says, you mean, why do I love her more than I love you? So here we have Mary and Jesus kissing. Whoa. We can't have that. Can't have Jesus having some type of arousal or anything like that. I say, why not? Does it take away from his message, from his commitment, teaching us on how to live a committed life, teaching us how to pray, how to commune with whom he called the Father, which I would call the Great Spirit or the Father, Mother, God. Call it what you will, just call on it. I just don't understand. I understand on an intellectual level, but if you don't grow, you're here to grow and you're here to learn. And if you stop growing because all the miracles happened 2,000 years ago, so I can't read anything, I can't think about anything else, I can't experience anything else, because that would be a sin, which means missing the mark. That's all it means in Greek. A sinner is a person who misses the mark. And don't we all do that? We're human beings.
Yeah.
My Bible tells me that we become human after leaving Eden. That's when we start becoming human beings. You have to leave paradise.
Yeah.
You have to leave paradise to start your journey.
And
so it's a mess. It's a mess.
It is. And I think that some people get the impression that that we're made in God's image because in the beginning of the Bible it says, let us make man in our image, but it says our image, and I've always wondered what that meant. Our image.
In Hebrew, it's Elohim. See, they're interpreting it differently. The Elohim means more than one God. It means more than one. So if you read that passage, it's saying, and the gods said, G-O-D-S, and the gods said, let us make man in our image. Now, some people will say, oh, well, God is talking to the angels.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. God is talking to the angels. Well, he's still saying, let us make man in our image. It's still plural. It's talking about more than one God. And these beings were God-like.
So how did things get so misinterpreted through time like this, as to a point now where you look at the Bible outside the box, say, and right away people are, oh my God, you're dwelling in demon stuff here, aliens are demons and da-da-da. It's like they believe that we are the only ones, and there's such a vast universe out there. And, who's to say God didn't create others, and maybe those others are tampering in creations of their own. I mean, look what our governments are doing. I mean, they're working on making life in test tubes and all the things that they're doing, and the geoengineering, and who's to say that there's not other races out there who did the same thing.
Well, we know there are other races out there now. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one believes in weather balloons and this type of thing. Not really.
Yeah.
And you have to say about the government, listen, if they don't exist, why do you have tons and tons and tons of classified documents to prove they don't exist?
I know.
You have the Belgian government, you have Mexico, you have Britain, you have all these nations saying that we're not alone. Only the United States sticks to the old lie. And I'm not surprised. Governments do that. That's what governments are for. They lie. That's what governments do. How else are you going to control people? And just like any other document, the Bible was written by human beings with an agenda and a perspective. It's like the old story of the blind men touching the elephant, and they each touch a part of the elephant, and they think they have the whole elephant. They have a part of the elephant, the trunk, the butt, the legs, but it's not the whole elephant. It's not the whole story.
Absolutely.
And so all I'm asking people to do is to think and to see what your heart tells you. Not what I tell you, not what some priest tells you or some minister or imam or rabbi. If it makes sense to you, then sure. Because the bottom line is this, Michael. You know what? Let's say everything I say is right. If it doesn't make you or me a more loving, a more creative, a more forgiving, a more vital, robust in health, resplendent, opulent, if it doesn't make you a better human being, a more loving human being, then what difference does it really make? It makes no difference at all. And so, we can, knowledge applied is wisdom when it's applied. But if it's just information, in this culture, we mistake information for wisdom. You can get all the information you want. That's what the superhighway is about. Information. Google this. Tweet that. Information. But if there's no wisdom. I look at all these stories and the different cosmologies, but they all come back to one thing. How do I live a committed life? This is what Muhammad was talking about. I know it's hard to think that way. I lived in New York. I was there when the planes hit the World Trade Center. But that's someone's view of religion. It's an extremist view. You want to look at us? Look at the Crusades. We went into Muslim territory because it was in the Holy Land, and we butchered and slaughtered. Not we. I mean, the Europeans, the Knights Templar, and those folks. I look at the Quran. I look at the Bible. I look at the Dhammapada. I look at the Upanishads. And this wisdom that's coming from star beings or angels, call them what you will, is that there is a law of one, that we are not separated, that we are all one. What happens to me affects you, and vice versa. These are not new messages, but we still don't seem to be able to get them today.
That's right.
And so this is, or else we're going to destroy our planet. It's really that simple. I mean, this is not, even Ray Charles can see it. This is not new. That we are at the brink.
Yeah.
We have climate change, and we have, a meteor could hit us. There's always the threat of nuclear detonation or annihilation. We have fracking. We just don't know how to get along with each other. We have racism. We have homophobia. We have all this stuff.
And, we are
destroyed. My God is bigger than yours.
Yeah, exactly.
I was told size didn't matter.
Yeah.
And this is what it is. This is really what it is. And I just want people to hear that the beings that I have seen, they have meant me no harm. Now, are there beings that do? You bet your sweet dippy. But that's what's like with any people. That's like with human beings.
Right. You know,
You know?
I've always seen religion as pretty much a creation for control and order and designed by man, because I just never seen God as belonging to any religion, and things like punishment and hell and plagues seem to be a way of man's thinking. And I don't know, maybe I'm far off, but that's what I've always thought about it. And
Well, I don't think it's far off, but I'm always careful when people say that. I'm a man of color in America. I see how Dr. King took that Bible and religion. I mean, the civil rights movement was a religious movement. So religion can have good. Gandhi brought down the British Empire to its knees. There was a time when people would say the sun would never set on the British Empire. Well, Gandhi said otherwise, and he was a Hindu. Religion doesn't necessarily mean bigoted, narrow-minded, homophobic, reactionary, non-thinking people. It doesn't have to mean that. It's just that there are some people, and right now it seems like the majority of those people use religion to support their prejudices. So I'm always, my parents are very religious. They grew up during segregation, and they could have grown up hating their oppressors, but they took the teachings of Jesus and the Bible very seriously, and they grew up and they found joy, and they passed that on to their kids. So I don't paint religion with the wide brush.
no, I think that it's the idea of it.
Yeah.
I think is.
I mean, because it does do some good for some people, and it does some good for me. But religion and spirituality, by their fruits you shall know them. If it's inclusive, it's coming from the place of the highest good. If it's exclusive, it's the religion you don't want to get involved with. If it's us and them, you got to find another way.
Absolutely. Now, I've dealt with people like that who, the last radio network I was on, as a matter of fact, they went all Christian-like on me and says, "Oh, we can't have psychics on your show no more. You can't talk about aliens because it's all evil," and da-da-da. And so I got away from them quick. So I've dealt with those people, believe me.
Yeah, I remember Dalai Lama said something very interesting. He said, for people who, he was telling people, like some, especially here in the West, there are a lot of Western Buddhists. And he was saying that, he had no problem with that. He said, but it's very hard to change your religion because it comes out of an experience. He said, but if you do change your religion, let's say you go from Christianity to Buddhism, or you go from Christianity to Native American spirituality, or whatever. He said, never speak badly of your old religion. He said, because it works for some people. And you've got to respect that. And he's a very wise man. So he's saying, if you do have to leave your religion, he says, I would rather see people in the West study Christianity more. And remember, there's different ways to be Christian, just like there were at the time after Jesus' death. And the original Christians were Jews. But, there's different ways to be Christian, or follower of the teachings of Jesus, who was not a Christian. So, but one thing you try not to do is to talk bad about your old religion, because it still works on people. My parents were Baptist, and that doesn't work for me anymore. I have my own way of reading and studying and following teachings of Jesus and what have you. And that's, I'm open to other things as well. But those stories mean a lot to me, and they always come back to me. But I don't talk bad about it.
And that's what I think.
I might say that's not my cup of tea. I'm not going to be barbecued. God's going to come back and barbecue me, and, I'm going to burn in hell because I don't believe this, that, and the other. That's fear.
Right.
And if it works for you, I think it's fine. That works for some people. And that's okay. It doesn't make me better than them or them better than me. That works for them. You don't know what souls are on their journey and what their lessons are. It just doesn't work for me. And it does. And I'll know what you believe by how you treat me. You can go to church every Wednesday night, the Bible study. You can go do 3 or 4 services on Sunday. You can go to all the retreats and missionary projects and more. And you know what? That doesn't mean anything. I know what you believe by how you treat me.
That's right.
It's just that simple.
That's
just
right.
that simple.
Absolutely. And, you know, and that's my point, I guess, is it's that, you know, the idea of religion, you know, and in the rules of it are good, you know, lead a good life, you know, be kind to others and that kind of thing. And I think that's what I try to encourage people is to, you know, have their own connection to God in their own way. And don't, you know, I don't know. It's just some organizations, they like to try to say, you got to do it this way. And if you don't, you're going to hell. And, you know, that's not true. I think there's many ways to God. And I don't think that, you know, you have to subscribe to any particular religion. I think that people should, you know, look at the Bible and figure it out for themselves. I think.
Well, see, now, a couple of things, brother. I'm going to push back with you. You used the word should a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to should all over people. And you don't want to become intolerant of intolerance. Right. And so, you know, people will emulate you. And so it doesn't work for you.
Right.
And you always got to bear that in mind, because if you don't, the ego is very subtle. And you can be not you, but we can be very self-righteous. Because basically you wind up saying, if you only did it my way, if you only knew what I knew. And it's not about that. If people, listen, people have a right to be as miserable, as closed-minded, and as fearful as they want to be.
That's very true. Well said.
They do.
Yeah.
It just may not be your way. And that's it. Because the way you live will be, people will know by how you live. I know people, they're Bible thumpers. I'm right here in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and we don't see eye to eye. We don't have to live alike to love alike. But what I struggle with, and what I'm trying to learn more and more, is let people be where they are. I don't know what plan God has for this person. I may be an older soul. They may be a younger soul. I may be the younger soul. They may be the older soul. The younger souls are more materialistic. You got to get a job. You got to make money. If you're going to be religious, you got to believe this way. And once I look at them that way, then I can say, it's still my brother or sister. We just don't see eye to eye. Because otherwise, you're very subtly, but you're creating an us and them.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
You're creating an us and them. And so you don't want to shit all over them. If they don't want to read the Bible without having a commentary by somebody else, then you bless them. That's fine. You know, if it makes you a more loving, forgiving, and accepting person, then that's all that matters. My parents believe that Jesus is going to come again on the clouds of glory, and he's going to judge the quick and the dead, and the people on the left are going to be barbecued, and the people on the right are going to do it. And I'm like, okay, I used to believe that too. It doesn't work for me anymore. And I don't try to talk them out of that. Mm-hmm. That's worked for them. That worked for them. Who am I to say, hey, come on, here's a better way? No. If it works for them and it brings them the happiness, if it makes, now, you may say, well, of course, I see it doesn't, Michael. I can see, but that's none of your spiritual business.
Right.
You know, let people be who they are. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever learn to do, or I'll ever learn to do, or anybody listening, is to let people be on the path they're on. And it's almost like I'm trained as a counselor, and it's almost like, you know, giving people advice when they don't ask for it. Do you ever do that?
Oh, yeah.
You give people advice. I had to learn. Do you want me to listen? I asked, do you want me to listen, or do you want my advice? But I just, you know, it's like the 12-step program. You know, you don't give unsolicited advice if you can help it. You don't have to fix. Just let people be. It's hard.
It is.
Try to go tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday. Try to go all day tomorrow, even half the day, without giving advice.
Yeah, that is hard.
It's a spiritual discipline. And it is difficult, but you can do it. And you won't do it right all the time. So all you have to do is just say, do you want me to listen to you? Or are you asking me what I think? And it's beautiful because it makes them think about what they want. I do it all the time as a minister. People come in my office, and all of a sudden they'll just talk for 10, 15 minutes straight, and I'll listen. And then maybe after 20 minutes, I'll say, what do you want from me? I know you wanted to come see your minister today, and I'm glad to see you. What do you want from me? How can I help you? Do you want me to respond to what you're saying? Do you want me to just listen?
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, well, I don't know what I want. Okay, let's start with that. Let's think about what you want. I want you just to listen. Fine. I'm here for you.
I see.
Would you, I want you to give me some suggestions. Okay, great.
It's a good practice if you could do it. I don't know. It seems like every day I get at least one incident where somebody will tell me about something, and in many cases they'll ask, well, what should I do? And I'm no expert, so,
but if they ask you, though, that's fine. What should I do? I mean, there's some things you have to say. I can't tell you that.
I do, usually.
Yeah, good man. I mean, I do it, and I'm the man. A woman asked me the other day, she had a rash on her face. She's in my congregation, and she just simply asked me, she said, look, it looks like I have a little rash. Do you think I should go to the doctor? I said, look, I can't tell you that. That's a decision you need to make.
Mm-hmm. Well, usually
I can't take that on.
Usually I'll say, well, if you want to know what I would do if it were me, I'll tell you, but I can't tell you what to do. Just like I can't tell anybody what they should believe, and I always tell the listeners, don't take my word for it. Don't take any of my guests' words for it. If you're that curious about it, do your own research. I don't care if somebody worships a rock, as long as they're living a good life and they're not hurting others. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I let them define what good is. I don't define what good is. One of the biggest lessons I learned from these contacts is just to let people live their lives. The world's not going to fall apart. It's already falling apart. And it's falling apart because we don't let people do stuff. We have to tell them what they do. We have to go do regime change. We have to go and say, you have to be a democracy. Everybody doesn't want to be and, I'm talking about on a political level, but you can go from the macro to the micro.
Yeah.
But it is a freeing thing to let people live their lives and me be responsible for mine. I am responsible for my life. The choices I make, the mistakes I make, that's the mark of a mature soul.
Amen to that.
I'm not responsible for you.
That's right.
I would help you if you needed me or whatever, but I'm not responsible for your life. I can barely get my life together. So don't want to go off on a tangent, but these are the things that I've learned from my contacts. And people may say, well, that's not profound. Okay, it's not profound, but how many people do it?
That's right.
It doesn't have to be profound. Just because something is not complicated doesn't mean that it's not wise or true or worth doing. Everything doesn't have to be complicated. Matter of fact, the most profound and spiritual truths are really simple ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're so simple, we can't do them. Or choose not to do them.
Now, you're getting into your ET contacts just a little bit here because my curiosity is piqued just a little bit.
Sure, and I talk about some of it in the book, but go on.
Yeah, so what I'm wondering now, there's people who have come on my show and said that they've been abducted. However, you say that you had an encounter or a visitation. So what is the difference?
I have a visitation, and these people are visitors. I don't really like to say alien, and I don't really like ET is a little too, it's just nomenclature, but, naming, But no, I wasn't abducted. But I'm not saying people haven't been.
Right.
And they're visitors. I try to lessen the us versus them because, again, as I noted before, I'm a professional diversity consultant, and diversity is all through the universe. And I'm not only a citizen of this country, I'm a cosmic citizen. And so these beings are part of creation. They may not look like me. I know they don't look. Some of them don't. There are some who do look human. Walk by you on the street, you wouldn't even know it.
Yeah, I've
But
heard
the ones
that.
I have encountered are, I've seen the reptilians, a race of reptilians, and these other brothers who may look like Greys, but they're not Grey brothers and sisters. They look like, and they're just chalk white. And there was nothing diabolical or evil. Like I said, if anything, they've expanded my consciousness. I've been healed by the encounter I had on the 4th of July. It's on my blog, but if you want to discuss it, it's fine. And I mean, now this is Michael's experience. Mm-hmm. You know, I know people who have been abducted, things, you know, ovum is taken from women, you know, sperm taken from men, not the greatest experience. Plus you got the fright on top of that. And it's all about the lens in which you look at stuff. And there's no right or wrong way. We process our experience the way we do. It's not right or wrong. But I have had positive encounters with visitors. Positive. Where I have grown. Where I have been expanded. Have I been frightened? Sure.
So did you ever find out why they were visiting you? I mean, did they give any specifics, or was it just the experience?
I did not get anything from them. They talked to me by showing me pictures in my head. We call that telepathy now. A friend of mine who was a very gifted psychic, he has since died, had told me, I mean, he was just a gifted psychic because he, you know, he had no idea this was happening to me. And he said that this has been lifetimes. I have a relationship with them. Atlantis, Egypt, we're getting very metaphysical now, and that I was singled out at birth. Now, I went to a psychic, a good friend who didn't know about this kind of stuff. She saw me on Ancient Aliens. She's a very gifted psychic, and she conjured them up, and they told her that, you know, Michael has a mission that he signed up for before he got here. And that mission is to let people know that we, as a species, not all, have come to help humankind in the evolution of their consciousness, to combat fear, to stop fearing everything different, to grow spiritually. And I feel like that's what I've been here to do. Not some mission where I'm grandiose and I'm hearing voices and it's all about me. No. But for these two psychics, I've been with them in other lifetimes. They singled me out at birth. There's other people in my family who have had these visitations. My daughter has told me, not about visitations, but my daughter's 7, but she has told me about past life things where space people were involved. And she was telling me this at 4 or 5.
Wow.
She calls it the airport. She said, Daddy, do you remember when you were my mommy and mommy was daddy? Don't you remember that? She said, and it's an airport we go to when we die. My dad died at the beginning of the year. And she said, that's where souls go, Daddy. It's like an airport. Some souls come to the airport and some souls go to the planet Earth. This is what she's telling me. She said, I remember the first time I picked you and mommy to be my parents. I said, really? She said, yeah. I said, tell me. She said, well, first of all, you had really long dreadlocks and I liked them. And I said, I want him to be my daddy. And she said, and I saw you kiss mommy and you didn't have a shirt on, Daddy. I said, that's interesting. She said, no, you weren't naked. She said, but you kissed mommy and you didn't have a shirt on and you had long dreadlocks. And she pointed to a chair in the living room. She said, I was standing right behind there when you couldn't see me because I was invisible, Dada. And I said, okay, Kevin, I believe all this stuff. But I said, who were you talking to? She said, a spaceman.
Wow. Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And we don't say, what, are you crazy? Because I believe in reincarnation, but I don't want to squelch that in her. But many times she says, well, Dada, you know, you were the girl back then. And many kids go through this, but we get it out of them, you know, because it's weird, it's scary, it's whatever.
Right.
And she told me that. She said, and she knows. She says, Daddy, the space people are your friends, right? I said, yeah, some of them are.
Absolutely. And I think along the same ways. I have people who tell me that there's nothing but bad coming from them, but I think it's like anything else. There's good and bad, just like you can have
Yes,
a
it
good
is.
dog
It
or a
is.
bad
Well,
dog.
and I don't even use those terms, Michael. You know what I do, and I'm not trying to be picky or
That's
or
okay.
sophisticated. But I just say they're just like there are with people. They're more evolved people, and they're less evolved people. Because when you start looking at good and bad, you're starting to make judgments. Now, don't get me wrong.
That's
Some things
true.
you have to judge. You have to use your good sense. But they came in my house, almost scared me, almost had me have a heart attack. Okay, that was bad. But look how my life has changed for the better. That was good. So I just say they're more evolved and less evolved. It's just like with people.
That's right.
They're more evolved souls and they're less evolved souls. Doesn't make them wrong. Now, are there more sinister and probably more diabolical star people? Sure there are. But you can walk out your door and walk down the street. And are there more evolved and more diabolical and less evolved human beings? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it is tough, to actually go through a full day. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about it. And it's like to go through a whole day without judging somebody. And we're all guilty of it, even though for myself, I try not to. I really try to be the best I can.
Well, hear me out, brother. Hear me out. And Brian says that, speaks highly of you, and I can feel that from you. No, I didn't say not judge, because there's such a thing as righteous judgment. Mm-hmm. What I was saying is to not give people advice unless you're asked.
Right.
No, I'm not saying not judge. We all judge. I was watching the NFL. I'm judging. I want one team to win tonight, and that may or may not happen. But to go through half a day, from 9 to 1, that I listen to people, and unless they ask me, what do you think? What would you do? Not to do it. Just to listen. Very difficult, but that's part of a spiritual discipline.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And some days you'll be better at it than others. It's not about being perfect.
Right. It's true. And, unfortunately, we have people here. I've got people close to me who claim to be, they're a man of God and, the Bible this and the Bible that, but they'll be the first ones to break the rules of that Bible and put judgment on somebody.
Yeah. Some of the worst people that I know sometimes. Sometimes it seems like the most bigoted people I know, or unpleasant, happen to be the most religious. But I've always got to be careful that I never go to, well, never say never. I just don't want to go to that place where I start saying all of them are like that. All of those Christians, all of those African Americans, all of those gay people, all of those white people. Boy, that's a big brush you're painting people with.
That is, and that's something I never do. I've had people call on my show and say, "Oh, these Muslims are this and that," and I stop them in their tracks and say, "You're not going to spread that hate on my show."
Yeah,
because they're not
all
all
bad. A whole group of people.
Yeah.
So it's Dr. King said, the less self-righteous we are, the easier it is for us to forgive.
And
but
that's
when you're
the
sure
key.
You're right, you have nothing to forgive because you're right. And then you have to ask yourself, did I come to planet Earth to live 80, 85, 90 years to be right? Is that why I'm on planet Earth? Is that the story of my whole life, that I came here to be right? It's got to be more to life than just being right.
Oh, there is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
hoping people buy the book, and call me, or actually just write me. You can write me on Facebook. Just go to Michael Carter at Alien Scriptures.
Okay.
And you can post some things there. Actually, I prefer you going to Alien Scriptures on the Facebook page. But if you want to buy it, of course, go to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. But yeah, keep the dialogue going. Ancient Alien series has really helped me out and helped book sales out, and I get a chance to be on there and talk, and it's been very good for me and for the book, and I've been blessed that way. I mean, it's not Pulitzer Prize, but it's about getting information out to the public, and that information applied can be wisdom. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be unless you turn it into wisdom, but the information is there.
Absolutely. And, I've had Michael Cremo on before.
Yes, I have some of his books here.
Oh, yeah. And
Forbidden Archaeology.
Oh, yes. And, I have taken, as I'm getting older, I've taken such a bigger, I've always been interested in extraterrestrials and life on other planets and this and that. But now I have taken such an interest in the Bible and its connection to visitors from off our planet. And, I think I think you're right. I think there's a big connection there. And let me ask you this, the Bible, in your opinion, what exactly is the Bible? I think of it as a history book. I don't know. How do you look at it?
The Bible is many things, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just one thing, at least not to me. The Bible can be a book of poetry if you read the Psalms and the Song of Solomon. It could be a soap opera if you read the story of David and Bathsheba. Pardon me. It's a story of tragedy and hope if you read the story of Jesus in the Gospel. It's the story of a people wandering in the wilderness if you read the Hebrew Bible and getting laws on how to live in the Ten Commandments. To the segregationists, it's a book that supports we wouldn't want to have interracial marriages or a mongrel race, as they used to say back in the day. If you're a person of color, whether you're a Latino liberation theologian or African American, and now even the GBLT, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, it's a book of liberation. So the Bible is more than one thing. And it's a book of UFO stories for me. That's one of the things it is. It's also a book of metaphysical truths. So it's not one thing. It's many things. It's what you bring to it.
Right.
It's what you bring to it. For some people, it's a book of history. So it's many things, Michael. It really is.
I can agree with that, absolutely. Now, just another question or two here. I don't want to keep you too long. Unless you could stick around, that's fine.
No, that's fine. I thought we were going to, 11:30, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I didn't know. I forgot. Martin, my publicist, I put down 9:30 to 11:30, but.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I'd like to keep you that long if you could stay.
Okay,
I just,
that's fine.
I understand from listening to some of your other stuff that you like to get up bright and early, and I don't want to,
Oh, I'll be up early anyway, Mike. It's just my body clock.
Okay.
I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning to pray and meditate. I do some yoga, but and by 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm tired. But tomorrow I have another interview at 9 o'clock, but only for an hour.
Oh.
I've been really trying to get the word out about this book and just get people to start thinking, we live in the 21st century and it's the space age. And, this is very real. And so how do we grow up as a species and realize we're not alone, that we never were really alone?
Right. My colleague says the human race will die off. He says, but the human family will live on forever. And, I agree. I think that's how we need to come together. We need to come together and forget all these little differences that we all have amongst each other, whatever it might be. You're a different religion or you're a different race. And I think we all need to come together. You think about all the resources we put into killing other human beings. If we had put those resources into bettering humanity, imagine where we could be right now.
Yeah. And that's a good word, because where there's no vision, the people perish. And we have to be able to imagine it, because if we can't see it, it won't happen. And you know, you look out on the world, and it seems like, you know, time has speeded up, at least in my perspective. And you know, there's a lot going on the planet. But it's also, every ending is a new beginning, and it's also, you know, it's like, you know, birth travails. You know, women go through all that pain, and then at the end of it, a beautiful new consciousness is brought into the world, a new way of seeing, a new world of being, a new way of doing, with the birth of a child. And so I think that's what we're going through now. We're going through the birth of a different world. And so people are going to hold on to the old as desperately as they can. But as a wise rabbi once said, you don't put old wine into new wineskins. But the old way of living has to change, because it's not working anymore. So we have to start thinking about cooperation instead of competition. We have to realize that unless we learn how to cooperate, not unless we're just going to bully people with our military, that there are new kids on the block, as in China and India. We have to learn that this is the only planet we have for now. And we can't keep doing what, you know, Einstein's definition of insanity is, of course, if you want to, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result.
That's right.
So, you know, there are changes that have to be made. And all these changes have to they have to come about in the way we think. You know, in AA, this is in 12 steps, you know, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's easier to think my way into a new way of being. So it's easier to think my way into a new way of being than it is to be a new way of thinking. You have to act as if. You have to act as if.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it changes, is by changing the way we think.
And Michael, I agree. And we have a call. So I'm gonna take this call. We've got Ben Davis, actually. He's actually been a guest on the show. Ben, welcome.
How you doing?
Doing fine. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Going back up to Jersey Wednesday. I'm flying.
Oh, well, you have a safe
now
trip.
we listen to the show and chat a little bit here and there, and as you were talking about the Bible, how, and God texted jokingly, well, it's kind of funny how the King James Version came up with English names and the origins of Jewish, Muslim, and so on. You know, all those different religions that profess the one God. And since, you know, and I was an acolyte in Episcopalian diocese in Florida, and they're the closest to Catholic that the Protestants came. And of course, I've read the Bible 3 times myself, and a lot of it is, like you said, very much so are poems. Some of them are drama, you know, soap opera. And like in Psalms, there are songs that were written down in words without the music attached. And since those centuries over the times, that have progressed to where we stand today. So it's kind of ironic to me that the Old Testament was used to relate to the New Testament, and how they pretty much not quite copied it, but they used it as examples. And it's similar to what I had texted King Moonracer over here about David Wilcox's new book, Synchronicity. And I'm not trying to sell the book or whatever, but it sure enlightened me to explanations that I've had lost throughout my entire life when it comes to religion and aliens all being, you know, connected somehow. And of course, nobody wants to disclose any of that information on the government side. And You've heard my story on the show before, and sometimes I feel that all of it's connected, just like Wilcox had explained about we are all connected. From the Law of One series, it was, remote viewing, such like that he tries to use this as a generating his book over. And he's captured a lot of the audience, or let's say his following, so to speak, to put it, more bluntly. But the thing is this, it all made sense when he said, we are all just energy beings, and we do evolve naturally, and it is a cycle, like in history, it will repeat itself, just like it says in the Bible. And so I just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, Reverend?
You said a lot of things, and I don't know, was there a question there?
Not really. I was just, you might call it babbling, but.
No. Listen, I agree with you. I agree with you. 100%. That there is a law of one. And, we can talk about the interconnected web of which and people do evolve. It's just that human evolution can be slow. And we evolve because we're all, if we can use the word, individual expressions of the creator or creation. And the hardest thing to do is to not believe in the separation. Many people have talked about this. The brother you're talking about, who some say is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, Neil Walsh in his Conversation of God series says the same thing. I mean, this is old wisdom from the sages of the ages. If you look at the Book of Ra, the channeled material from an extraterrestrial who had visited this planet eons ago, there is Atlantis talked about that people had broken the law of one, that we became separated. And once we became separated, we started competing with one another and believing in scarcity, that if you had good things happen to you, there's not enough good happening to me, whether it's money or sex or drugs or love or codependence. There's enough to go around. And we believed in this scarcity because we believed we were separate. And I think that's what you were saying, that at least one of the things you were saying, and we are energy. And energy doesn't die. It changes form, but, it can't be created and it can't be destroyed. So I think that quantum physics is telling us that now, but I think if more people started looking at that, instead of Jesus resurrected and I'm just using him as an example, and so you all have to believe in this to be resurrected, what if Jesus was really coming to say that you cannot die? You cannot die.
Yeah. And they pointed a lot of that out in the synchronicity.
Yeah, you can't die. You will always go on. You will always live. And so it's just something to tweak. But because of the fear and because we've been taught to hate each other and to fear, that this is where we are now. But I do think it's an exciting time. What you were talking about, brother, is you are a person whose consciousness is just on a different plane. And it's hard. It's like being Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where sometimes you may be the only sane person in a room full. What's insane is passing for normal. And and sometimes it's easier to unlearn. It's harder to unlearn things than it is to learn. And it can be a challenge, but that's where we grow. That's where we grow, by dealing with our differences and learning not tolerance. That's a place to start, but learning acceptance. So I thank you. I thank you for that.
And you were talking earlier also about how the evil in the world in current times and how the people or the sheeple should pay attention more. Well, I mean, it's so deep in how the human population is being mind controlled. I mean, there's so much speculation. It could be technology, it could be the drugs, it could be the food, it could be everything combined, and could it also be spiritual, which is something that the synchronicity key brought out into my enlightenment about how you can be turned as positive or negative or vice versa. You can go either way. So having said that, can you relate to anything that has brought your life into the light of things to where you put this book out? I want to read it.
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you something, and I'm loving.
Yeah. Did we lose somebody?
I can barely hear him.
Okay, hold on.
Oh,
Can
there
you hear
you
me
go.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yep. Can hear you fine
Okay.
now.
I got you.
I believe in God. Okay, I'm gonna, people are saying, what does he believe that he's a minister? Yes, I do believe in God. I don't believe in anthropomorphic beings, but I believe in God. So many people, like what I'm learning from you. I mean, I just learned that when I was open, the right person would come my way, the right book would come my way, the right situation would come my way, the right opportunity would come my way. And so what I'm learning, especially through these star people, but listen, like I said, look, I don't know whether you have contacts or not. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But there are people who haven't, and they're just as wise and whatever. So you don't have to have that. But what I've learned is that life, you have to be open to life. And it's hard because life can be scary. But when I'm open to life, and when I'm willing to look at the laws of life, and by that I mean when I'm willing to say, I'm responsible for my life. If I mess up, it's nobody else's fault. It's not that my mom and dad may have been alcoholics or I was and I'm not saying that doesn't affect, but eventually I have to take responsibility for my life. But once I do that, I empower myself. And once I start looking at things differently, Shakespeare said nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I'm not saying being Pollyanna, but for instance, I'll share something personal. My wife and I have separated. I did not want this separation. Now we're talking about getting back together. But, I had to move out. I did not want this. I'm 56 years old. I thought I'd grow old and die with this woman. But
the way the cop calls you out.
but
I know what you're going through.
I'm like, oh my God, this could have been one of the best. This could have saved our marriage.
Well,
this could have saved our marriage. And so, but you know what, man? If you're so busy looking at the downside and missing the lesson, you miss it. You miss the lesson.
Well,
if you try something, it's one of those things.
Like you were talking about evil and good, which is the basis of religion and the Bible to steer us in the right direction as we evolve in humanity, right? Well, similar thing happened to me. My wife went through breast cancer, double mastectomy a year ago. And during this time, her medications had made her so evil. I mean, totally in denial, withdrawal. And I'm talking about, I don't want you. In fact, she's had me removed twice after I hadn't seen her in 6 months. Support her, all that stuff. And now I've been home a month.
Yeah.
And I have been working on what you're saying, the good things, and trying not to express any negativity. And it's now coming around. She's now back into the belief that we are still married and so on. So forth. However, she even bought my plane ticket today.
Yeah.
Or going back to Jersey. I mean, I'm coming back up to New Jersey Thursday. But and it just boggles the mind how that happens.
Yeah.
It does.
Well,
How people can take over somebody, drug controlled, otherwise, spiritually, whoever, and whatever. And if you don't recognize that, it'll get you.
Well, see, now I want to be clear because I'm not talking about good and evil because I don't believe in evil. I believe that Hitler is in heaven if there's a heaven. Yeah, I believe because everybody's forgiven. Now, what I will say is that, and plus I believe in reincarnation, so all things do balance out. But that's my own personal belief. But what I will see, I'm saying just the opposite. I try not to label, because usually when you label, you can miss the lesson. Now, I give an example. I had a brother who was murdered back in 1995. They never caught who did it. Tragic, okay? Someone robbed him, shot him. He was 33 years old. Was that tragic? Yes. Was it evil? I don't know if I would say there. People are murdered and what have you. Have I forgiven? Yeah. But I tell you what it did do for me. It made me wake up to that life is short. It made me wake up to that. I had a brother-in-law who was beaten to death in broad daylight in Brooklyn 2 summers ago because he's a coin dealer, and they thought he had some gold coins on him, so he was beaten to death. I say all that not to elicit sympathy, but what was one of the things I learned from that? That anything can happen to anybody at any time.
That's true.
And that we walk through life like, well, that can't happen to me. And you don't want to dwell on that, and I don't want it to happen to you. But life is a gift, and it can be taken at any time. And even though I knew that intellectually, when my brother was murdered, when my brother-in-law was murdered, people with cancer. So it makes me, like the Buddhists say, be mindful and try to stay in the moment. Thank you for sharing me what you said with your wife. The best thing that helped me get through, we broke up. I had a blood clot, and I was so worried about whether we were going to get that back together or not. I developed a blood clot, and it came right on time. It could have killed me, and it didn't. And there's some other things that happened, but that woke me up. The worst thing that could have happened to me, at least what I could say, was the best thing, because it made me realize, Michael, whether your wife stays with you or not is not the issue. You can't control her. You can control your reaction to her. But that's easier to say than to do.
You're right.
So a blood clot, was one of the best things that ever happened to me. You hear people with cancer sometimes, not all, or people with life-challenging illnesses, and you talk to them, and they say, some of them will say, man, that's the best thing ever happened to me. Why? Because it woke me up to life is precious.
The cancer my wife has, she's in a healthcare profession her whole life. That's what she was educated for. She's a dietitian.
Yeah.
And when the doctor told her you got breast cancer, it's coming off. But afterwards, the prognosis is you're going to die if you don't take these medications, right?
Yeah.
And what I read about the medications, in which is similar to all medications, is nothing but poison, which is they're not telling the truth to the public or, patients or however you want to look at it. But there are cures out here, and people have tried to publish this, and it has been squashed by the elite and those in power, including our own government. Right. And just going around the other day, walking my dog, I ran across somebody that asked me about my wife. I hadn't seen in 6 months, and I said, yeah, well, she's still the same. When 3 people that were there, her aunt and 2 of her aunt's friends, they were all cancer survivors that did not go the medical route. They said we went through, what was it called? Immuno-augmentative therapy, AIT. And it's not in the country, it's in the Bahamas. So they handed me a pamphlet, I did some studying, I talked to my wife, because anything I tell her is, no, I'm not going to do that. But she's in such a belief, and that's what they do. They put the fear of God in you, if there is one, if that's the way you want to see it, that if you don't take these pills, you're going to die. Well, if you take the pills, you're going to die anyway, because it's going to ruin parts of your body that, are trying to reach spirit. It's all about your immune system. So I finally got the information from these people. She finally calmed down just this week. And hopefully she will see, from my point of view, that if you got cancer, you can control it. And that's why I wanted to say this, how it mixes with evil and or God, or how you see life, in general, right here, especially on this show with Michael, because he exposes things that a lot of people will never talk about.
Well, I thank you for sharing your story, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go. I got to get ready for patty time. I'll have a good one.
All right, thank you very much,
Ben.
Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm still going to listen. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Be safe. Drive careful. Be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I see what he's talking about, when, it's, you hate to use the word evil, I guess, but then you have to wonder, what is the motive behind some of the things that are done? I mean, you have to give them a name, and some of it sounds like evil would fit very well.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying what I do. I mean,
right.
I'm using Hitler as an example. Hitler had some difficult things going on with him. But when the sun came out, it did not shine on Hitler. When it rained on everybody. It didn't just rain on Hitler. I mean, life is neutral. It's the choices that we make. And for me, evil starts, if I can say Hitler's evil, but if I can't see that there's a Hitler in me, then I'm dangerous.
Right, and I think that
because I'm never. Oh, I would never do that. I'm too self-righteous. I'm too much of a good person. I'm blah 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 blah. And no, there's a Hitler in everybody. Just like there's a Nelson Mandela in everybody, or a King, or a Doris Day, or a Dorothy Day, or But once I start, this is the polarity. He's all bad, and I'm not. Well, that's called separation.
Absolutely. Separation, division.
Separation. So I very rarely will look at evil. And I know in seminary, the problem of evil. But like I said, for me, reincarnation makes perfect sense. And reincarnation balances the debt. Because whatever Hitler did in this lifetime, when he comes back, he will have to deal with that. You reap what you sow. That's a cosmic law. In the East, they call it karma. You may call it, scientists call it cause and effect. Jesus said, you reap what you sow. Well, it is done unto you as you believe. So those are laws. Just like there's a law that if I jump off this third story window, I'm going to splat.
Yeah.
But if I can learn how to make the laws work for me, by keeping a positive attitude, by being open, by facing my fears, by living with some integrity, by admitting I make mistakes, sometimes heinous mistakes, I become a more holistic, more authentic human being. Not perfect.
Yeah.
Because I'm already perfect in my creation. But at least that works for me. And I can only go by that. If people see evil, nothing wrong with that. I don't get angry with them. Don't get angry with me if I don't. I see heinous things. I see things that it's just human beings and humanity to human beings. But for me to say, well, that is evil, because there's nothing new under the sun. This has been going on for millennia. It's just now the stakes are higher. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that. Is there another caller?
No, not at this point. But I wanted to ask you about Lucifer and why the bad rap associated. It's got associated him with hell and so many bad things. And I seen a recent episode of Ancient Aliens, and they were discussing actually how Lucifer may have been misunderstood. What do you think about all that?
I mean, Ancient Aliens speculates a lot. Lucifer was the most beautiful angel, the story goes, and he rebelled against God or the extraterrestrial, because God said that you need to bow down to human beings, specifically Adam, and he said, why should I bow down to him? I'm a heavenly being. Of course, we have Genesis 6. The story there is elaborated more in a book called the Book of Enoch. Now, these angels, it was 200 angels who called the Watchers, who came to Earth, had sex and had wives, and had giants who were offspring from these marriages and from this intercourse, and were supposed to be giants and evil. Now, but when you read the Book of Enoch, you find out that these angels taught human beings how to heal. They taught how to work with metals. They taught astrology, astronomy. In some ways, they started civilization. And so, again, it's interpretation. uh, you know, Lucifer didn't rebel against God. Lucifer rebelled against another extraterrestrial and said, I'm not going to bow down to human beings. This is someone you just made out of you genetically, why should I bow down? And so here we have. I think just like all things, we could look at Lucifer in a different light. I always had a problem with the stories because, we live our lives sometimes that it's a big giant scoreboard. God 12, the devil 14. Either God is God or is not. If you look at the book of Job, when they're tempting Job, Satan is friendly with God. They make a wager about Job's life. Satan says, well, when things go good, he's always singing your praises, but I got news for you. Let's see if he sings your praises if things go bad. And God says, okay, let's play with this man's life. Let's take everything away from him. His money, his wife. Now that's kind of cruel.
Yeah.
So Carl Jung says in his book, The Story of Job, he says that actually Job had more integrity than God in that story. So, this has been going on and on and on. And again, if you read Elaine Pagel's book, The Origins of Satan, where she, the Princeton theologian, she basically comes out and says that there are many levels to who is evil and who is Satan. But basically what you're saying, those people are evil and Satan because they don't believe what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They're the other. So that's my take on it. Who knows? I did tape some of that episode of Satan and on Ancient Aliens, and yeah, I mean, it's just it's a new way of looking at it because again, we were told what we were supposed to believe. But I'm reading that book in the Book of Enoch, and I'm like, well, that's not so bad that they taught us this. Now they also taught us how to make weapons of war,
mm-hmm.
but
yeah.
they were starting civilization.
Yeah, and
but I don't know if I would. I'm a big, powerful person, and my boss, because again, I'm not saying that that's God, I'm saying it's another extraterrestrial, says that you need to bow down and worship this being, and this being can barely wipe the mucus from his nose, or her nose, I may say, are you kidding me? Really? So, it's interpretation, it's what you were brought up to believe. I'm glad they had the wherewithal to at least discuss it, but that's a hard sell for a lot of people. To them, the devil's the devil and it's evil and blah blah blah. It's just easier to think in polarities. We don't see life. What's the old adage? We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. But it's just so much easier just not to think. What's the question? It's so easy. It's so much easier.
Yeah.
Because see, once you start doing this, you're responsible. See, if I don't know, then I can say, well, hey, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. See, so I'm innocent. But once I start researching and getting this knowledge, I'm not so innocent anymore.
You think it could be, Rev, that maybe ancient human beings might have gotten technologies from these aliens and actually left this planet, and maybe some of what we see today is us coming back?
I don't feel that in my heart.
Okay.
Like I said, there have been reports of people who have met visitors who look human.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the Billy Meyer story, the Palladians sometimes will say that they are human beings, but they don't mean in the same sense that we are. I think what's beautiful about it is that as we evolve, we may be that race of extraterrestrials, or maybe we will be the next evolved human beings. You ever see the movie The Matrix?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we will have that capability of being able to download and get information. And yeah, I guess the kung fu stuff is pretty good, but if you need it. but just that we'll be able to talk, maybe communicate by telepathy. We'll be able to have mastered some of the unknown laws of physics. Maybe we'll be able to travel back and forth in time if we don't already do know how to do that and it's kept secret. Maybe we will know how to materialize and dematerialize. Maybe our spirituality will catch up with our technology. It's certainly something to envision. We only use 10% of our brains.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
part of that is that we don't realize we can use the rest of it.
Yeah. But I don't know. That theory doesn't resonate with me. I've heard it before, but it's definitely a possibility. Mm-hmm. I just know that the beings that I've come in contact with they are not from this neighborhood.
Yeah, far advanced than us. Some like to believe that we're it. We're the highly advanced, and we're just a drop in the bucket, I think, compared to what's out there.
I do think it's hubris to think that all the culmination of millions and billions of years that we're the pinnacle of creation. Now, our humanist brothers and sisters would say, yeah, I believe in a supreme being. That supreme being is called human beings. We're the pinnacle. We're as good as it gets.
Well, I don't know.
But, whatever floats your boat. Like I said, whatever you believe, I'll know what you believe by how you treat me.
Right. Another thing that comes to mind quick here before I give you the floor and we finish up, Noah's flood. Now, it's said that there was, a species from, every or two of each species was put on this ark. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it make more sense that maybe it was the DNA for each species?
Yeah, it would. Yeah. It would. Definitely it would. Definitely. Yeah. And that's probably what had happened.
That's what I was thinking.
And some people say that's happening now. Some people say that some of the grays, or because of different species of grays from Zeta Reticuli and other places, even there's more than just one species, and that when they come here and take samples and what have you, some people have speculated or say they've been told that when this planet is destroyed, they can recreate.
Yeah.
On another planet.
And that might be it. Rev, we're coming near the end here, and I want to give you a few minutes to give out websites and anything else that you'd like, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to just sum it all up. I want to thank you dearly for being a guest tonight. I have really enjoyed speaking with you, and you are welcome back anytime.
Michael, and you call me, and I'll be back. I will. We'll talk with Mark. Again, the book is called Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, but titled somewhat deceiving because I also go into the Quran. You can go to my website, michaeljscarter.com. You can purchase the book that way. You can blog me. I'd like you to use Facebook, but you can use whatever is good for you. Please go to Amazon, or the book is in paperback for $9.89. It is ebook, Kindle, or Nook for $4.99. And just to sum it all up, would be this: follow your bliss, follow your path, and you will know if your life is open, if the dreams that you are dreaming start to come true. Just to be open to life. It is precious. You don't have to have visitations from otherworldly beings to know this. But life is short, and we're here to learn to love. And as Jodie Foster said in the movie Contact, if we are the only being in the cosmos, it sure is an awful waste of space.
Oh, it surely is.
Yeah.
It surely is. Well, Reverend, again, thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and tell Brian I said hello.
I will, and I'll tell Mark. And quick question.
Sure.
Is it possible to get a site for this or copy of this interview? You know,
absolutely.
Will you send me a site that I could go to?
I will actually. I'll send you a link.
Link. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll send you a link after the show. I'll get that sent to you. Absolutely.
Okay. I wish everybody a wonderful and prosperous and healthy holiday season. And peace be with all of you, and God bless you all.
Also with you. Thank you again, my friend, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hemorrhoids. If you go into Jeremiah chapter 13, I'm just making a case, so be patient with me. Chapter 13, verse 14, the Lord says, I will smash them one against the other, parents and children alike, declares the Lord. No pity, compassion, or mercy will stop me from destroying them. That doesn't seem like a loving person.
No, it don't.
Okay, and this is the Hebrew translation I'm reading. All right, if you go to Ezekiel chapter 4, all right, Ezekiel chapter 4, this God tells Ezekiel to eat excrement on a barley cake. It says, chapter 4, verse 12, eat it as a barley cake. You shall bake it on human excrement before their eyes. So says the Lord, shall the people of Israel eat their bread unclean among the nations to whom I will banish them. He answered me, I allow you cow's dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm not making this stuff up. Now, if we look in Amos, chapter 5, verse 8, who made the Pleiades and Orion? How did these ignorant people know that there were planets called Pleiades and Orion? I was told that people thought the earth was flat until Columbus. I asked this in my seminary class, and my Old Testament professor, at least she didn't lie, she said, I don't know. If you look at Job, chapter 38, verse 31, can you tie cords to Pleiades or undo the reign of Orion? Again, so these people know about planets. Where are they getting this information? And last but not least, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. Okay, how do these people know that the earth was a sphere?
That's right.
And it's rhetorical. I'm not asking you to answer that, but these were some of the questions.
Yeah.
And this is right here in the Bible. Now, people aren't going to preach on this on Sunday, which I wish they would, or at least entertain it. But how do they know? How do they know about these planets?
That's true, because we're led to believe that it was just recently that we've discovered the world wasn't flat, but these people apparently knew a whole lot more. And, how did these ancient folks know so much about not only the stars, but building structures like pyramids and patterns?
Yeah, the technology. We can't do a pyramid today. We don't have the technology to build a pyramid today that was built, 10, 15, 20,000 years ago in Egypt. We don't have the technology now to do it. Where did they get it from? But we were told slaves did it. Really?
Yeah, I know.
Really?
And patterns that were made on the ground that can only be seen by the air. I mean, why would they do that?
Yeah, the Nazca lines or the Nazca plains in South America. And so again, these are the questions that drove me to start to say, hey, there's more going on here. And all the cosmologies, whether it's Native American folk, First Nations folk talking about the star people, whether it's, again, the East Indian brothers and sisters talking about the Vimanas and the Bhagavata, and the Upanishads. I mean, they're talking about, and they can't, everybody's not lying. This is not fanciful language. They're trying to say, in the language of their day, that these beings flew. When you see angel, angel just means messenger, of course, in Greek, but when you see a human being depicted in a painting or something as an angel, they're not telling you that they actually had wings. What they're trying to tell you is these people flew. On the Yucatan Peninsula. And I talk about the being in my room, December 28th, 1989, I'm coming back, and that changed my whole life, obviously. And again, I go about it in much more detail in the book. But after that, after I went to a psychiatrist, because I thought I was losing my mind, I don't know, it was almost like that event triggered me. Maybe that's what they wanted me to do. But I could not get enough of, these beings and religious texts. Right. And so I just went great guns at every book I could buy, every TV show I could look at. Because, see, I wasn't a Trekkie or anything like that. I can honestly tell you, at 56 years young, that I've only seen maybe a half of episode, if that, of a Star Trek movie. It just didn't draw me. So it wasn't like, well, man, he's got an overactive imagination. He's saying this, that, and the other. Not at all. Even now, I mean, Trekkie, I'm just not into it. But I was having these experiences. The last one I just had was July 4th of this year, after many years in between. And my life started to change, obviously. I started to feel a connectedness, not just to humankind, but to the earth. I started caring about this planet. Just my whole consciousness had changed. It was almost like I became more intelligent. But, words get in the way, but words are all we have. But I got to tell you, and I just started reading in the Hindu scriptures, in the Hebrew Bible, in the New Testament, even some Buddha scripture that may lend itself to that. I mean, some of this is speculation, but I think now with shows like Ancient Aliens, let me tell you, 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't even be talking about this. I could have lost my job. I don't preach it from my pulpit, even though many of my congregants have said, I've seen you on TV talking about this. And they don't bat an eye. But that's what triggered me coming back from Mexico, waking up in the middle of the night, seeing my room lit up like Times Square, seeing this pear-shaped being with the wraparound Ray-Ban eyes, not a gray, because they're different species, and we must be careful when we talk about aliens and what do they want. Well, that's with people. They're different species and races. And this being is staring at me with this metallic jumpsuit, and I pull the covers up over my head, like any other red-blooded American man would do, I guess, hoping it would go away. And I feel like I'm outside. I feel like I'm outside. All of a sudden, I'm freezing. And I open my eyes, and I'm in my room. And, for about 6-8 months, every full and new moon, I was having visitations. To this day, not as bad, but I will sleep with, I'll keep my light on until my bedroom light, until the very end. Now, they've never hurt me. It's just the fear. And fear is a terrible thing for human beings because it's fear. It's only love and fear, and so you get to choose each day. But for me, they never hurt me. They've always been friendly. As a matter of fact, they've actually helped me in many times. But, it's just the shock of my doors are locked, the windows are closed. It's pretty chilly here in the mountains of North Carolina this evening. Mm-hmm. And to wake up in the middle of the night and see a being in your room, it's just that fright.
And I'm in Columbia, South Carolina.
I got to tell you, it'll wake you up.
Oh, I bet it will. And I would be, a lot of people say, oh, I'd love to meet him. But let's face it, we're always afraid of the unknown. And that's why
Exactly.
people fear death so much, because they just don't know. And
so what's going to happen is, if we're not careful, we're going to blow ourselves up.
Absolutely.
We fight too much.
And I think there's evidence that this has happened before on this planet. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, in the East Indian cosmology, they talk about the Vimanas and possibility of nuclear blast. These flying machines called Vimanas. They're, of course, in Judeo-Christian scriptures, we hear about a war in heaven between Michael and his archangels. And so what's interesting is that, even these beings fight. They're very much like us. And so, the point becomes, at least in my mind, how do we learn to love? How do we learn to tap into our full potential as creative beings? And so for me, I know some people are into propulsion systems and how do they fly and do they come from different dimensions? And I mean, I think all these things are fascinating. And maybe it's because I'm a clergy person, but for me, my interest is once you've had this experience, and you don't have to have this experience, obviously, to know that love conquers hate, and that, you don't have to have someone from another world come and have to have an extraterrestrial experience. However, what does come about is, how do I walk into the unknown? How do I deal with people? Because we can't even get along sometimes, just human beings. You're black, you're white, you're gay, you're straight, you're Tea Party, you're not. We can't even pull it together here on planet Earth. So it's going to be tough to pull it together with beings who come from elsewhere.
Absolutely. And, you said something else that rang true in the book, and that is that our task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find the barriers within ourselves that we have built against it. And I think that is very clever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's several people get credit for that, but the poet Rumi, I got that as hanging on my wall, and I think that's it. We don't have to seek for love. Once we seek to the barriers of it, we'll find it. So it's not about seeking, let me find love. It's let me look within and find the places within me that I block that love, where I feel I'm undeserving of that love, where I'm afraid of that love. Then is when that's when the journey begins. That's when you go down the rabbit hole, my friend.
Oh, yeah. And now, Alien Scriptures, if I may say so, is an incredible book, and it really makes a man think, let me tell you. So I'd like to dig into it some, if we may.
Yeah, come on.
Okay. I wonder first, what led you down this road, being that you studied in seminaries and you devoted a good part of your life to learning about the Scriptures. And again, what led you down this path of Alien Scriptures? In other words, I guess, at what point did the light come on and you said to yourself, aliens?
Well, okay. It's a great question. Okay. I can remember growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, which is where I'm from originally. When, I went to church, I was everywhere. I was in every denomination, and part of that was trying to please my parents, but also it's almost like I had done this before. I knew from an early age that I was going to be some type of priest or minister, maybe a secular minister like a therapist or what have you, but I knew that I would be speaking in front of crowds of people. But I can remember when someone asked me, do you believe there's life on other planets? And I said no, and they seemed stunned. And they said, why? I said, because it's not in the Bible. What got me into this was my own personal contact experience. I talk about it in the book, coming back from the pyramids in Chichen Itza and Tulum. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening, Reverend. How are you?
Hey, brother. How are you?
I am doing fine, my friend, and we are live, and you're on Late Night in the Midlands. And I'll tell you, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here tonight. I have read a good deal of your book, and I've seen lots of videos, and I think you're right on, man.
Listen, first of all, believe you me, it's my pleasure to be here. Brian Kennard, Great Publication, says, sending you greetings and salutations. He's my publisher. And listen, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, good. And so, so have I. I really have to. This is something that we do discuss at least once a week. We get into this conversation on this show. I know I've got a good friend by the name of Peter Kling, who also believes right along the lines like you do, that there is evidence in these scriptures, such as the Bible, of aliens.
Yeah, and listen, I could always be wrong, and I don't think I am, but I could always be, and I wanted to. I'm not trying to take away anybody's faith or anything like that. That's not what I'm about. But I think that in all these cosmologies that talk about these star people or beings coming down from the sky, I think we have to at least look at it and then go from there. If it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. I am a minister. I do not preach this in my church. I'm not trying to start a UFO church or anything like that.
Right.
But as you know, in my bio, I'm a professional. One of the other things I do is I'm a professional diversity officer, and so a diversity consultant. And this is, to me, this is just an extension of that work. That diversity is in our cosmos, in our universe, and that the universe is teeming with life, and we really need to just be open. That's all. Be open.
Right. And, there's a little section of your book that says, that you confess that you do have an agenda in writing this book, that you want us to look at the monotheistic religions with fresh eyes for our 21st century. And you know what? You're right. We really need to look outside the box. I don't think, assuming there is a God, I have no doubt that we were given the capabilities to think and explore for a reason, for a reason.
No question. And again, for me, it's not about trying to take away people's faith. I don't think that these views necessarily are threatening. But I know that some people get scared about this kind of stuff. It's blasphemy, it's this, that, and the other. And I just say, look, let's just look at the evidence and see where it leads us. The beautiful thing about this, one of the beautiful things, is that you find the marriage of science and religion.
Yes.
And they don't have to be distant cousins who rarely, if ever, speak to each other. And the only thing I feel with our planet is that our technology has outrun our spirituality. I think King said it much more eloquently. And so we have this technology, but we don't have the spirituality to go with it.
I think goes with aliens, I think. And for the record, I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, so I'm not far from
we're neighbors.
Yeah, it is chilly.
Yeah, it is chilly. I love this weather. I love the seasons. That's why I stay on the East Coast. And my wife is a Southerner. She's from Atlanta. But yeah, it's gotten chillier. But I love it. I love the autumn weather, and the leaves are changing and that kind of thing. But then, like I said, and then it made me go to the Bible and, okay, where are these beings? I started looking at the stories differently. Jesus and the Star of Bethlehem. Started looking at Ezekiel, a little differently. I mean, they're talking about things in the sky. I started looking at the Exodus story again, the pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night, which, by the way, there's no Jewish religion until the Exodus. And so I'm like, wow. Jesus, also being Jewish, knew these stories. And so, I started saying, now, wait a minute. If it's in the sky and I don't know what it is, that's the definition of unidentified flying object. But as we come into the Christmas season and you read that story, there are many ways to read it, obviously, and there are many different interpretations. But thinking of the Jesus story, the birth of Jesus, stars don't fly across the sky and stop and shine lights down on mangers. If they did that, the whole gravitational pull of the planet, you want to talk about tsunamis. Yeah. You want to talk about FEMA trying to get to a disaster area, but this light, this star, three wise men follow it, and it stops and it hovers over the place where the baby's born. Man, that sounds like something intelligent in the sky.
Yeah, that's the way I think of it as well. You hear about the light shining on them for what was it? I guess, I don't know, for 40 years, was it? A 40-year walk?
You're talking about the Exodus story. Yes, they're wandering in the desert. This pillar of cloud by day. That means, it looks like a cloud in the daytime, and a lot of modern-day UFO sightings have UFOs hiding in clouds, or there's a trail of clouds behind them. So at night, it's a pillar of cloud. In the evening, in the day, it's a pillar of cloud. At night, it's the pillar of fire by night, which means it's glowing. When the Israelites are fleeing Egypt, this thing is leaving them, and it stops above them while they sleep at night. And in the morning, they move on and they follow it. This is intelligence.
Absolutely.
If people are following this thing. So for me, I started to say, well, I'm not saying God is an extraterrestrial, not at all. But what I am saying that maybe what we think as God may be an extraterrestrial. I mean, Jehovah, Yahweh, I'm sorry, he has temper tantrums. He wants to drown everybody and start all over again. He has the Israelites go into Canaan and kill and rape and pillage, and there are already people there. It's kind of like the Columbus story. I discovered a place where people already lived.
Yeah.
And so, these people go in and they rape and pillar and murder. And I'm looking at 1 Samuel chapter 5. Now, in the King James Version, which is the worst translation you can ever have, because it makes all the people there speak Shakespearean English, in the Hebrew translation, this God, chapter 5, verse 6, gave the people hemorrhoids. Now, in the King James Version, they call them boils. But for those of you who are Bible thumpers, or if you want to look, go to 1 Samuel chapter 5. Read all of chapter 5 and chapter 6, and you will see that the Philistines, they stole the Ark of the Covenant, and they get hemorrhoids. Okay, what kind of God would strike people down with